This is the 2021 Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk Elite. Now, looking at the Cherokee lineup, there are 3 different engine choices that are available and a series of different trim levels. We're going to dive deep into the vehicle, figure out all the different options, horsepower, torque specs, what's going on with the cargo dimensions, and things like that. Steve here, Cars with Steve, and before we get started, I want to give Pickering Chrysler a huge shout out and a thank you for giving me access to this vehicle to shoot the video for you today. Check down in the description below for their contact details. Now, this is going to be a very in-depth video. If you're looking for a shorter one, check down in the description below for that link. But without further ado, let's dive into it and see what the 2021 Cherokee has to offer. Looking at the outside of the vehicle, so the wheel itself looks really nice. We've got a beautiful destination all-terrain tire. When it comes down to the actual tire sizing, it's going to be between a 17, 18, or a 19-inch tire, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you get. But very nice look to it. Nice little molding lip along the side there, which really contrasts, especially looking at this beautiful orange. We've got a beautiful LED headlamp, so it's going to be standard across the entire vehicle lineup. Moving down a little bit, we've got LED fog lamps, which aren't going to be available in the base sport model, but it's available across the other trim lines otherwise. Really great look to it. We do have some front tow hooks there as well. Nice painted red. Now, that is same thing going to be available in some versions of the vehicle, not available in others. So whether you're taking it off-road or not is really going to dictate which trim level of the vehicle you look at. Now, this one also has the added technology package. It gives us adaptive cruise control, which is why we've got that forward sensing system there as well, because the system essentially is going to help us out with the adaptive cruise control side of things. But this one also does have the park assist feature. Park assist, we're going to dive into it a little bit, but the park assist can help us out with either parallel or perpendicular parking, which is kind of nice, but great body to it. Interesting kind of design on the front there. We've got the Jeep logo along the top, interesting grille. Looking at some standard technology in the vehicle, so you can see there we've got our backup camera. That's going to be a North American standard now. We've got the reverse sensing system, which is available optionally inside of some trim levels. It will be standard, as well as our blind spot system. So this is going to highlight orange if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side. Now, I say standard in some trim levels because if we look at the 80th anniversary, the Trailhawk and up, it is going to be standard technology, but it is available optionally otherwise. Taking a peek underneath the hood of the vehicle. So the Cherokee lineup does have 3 available engine choices depending on the trim level of the vehicle you're looking at. We are looking at the Trailhawk Elite. So this is the 3.2 liter Pentastar V6. It's going to push out 271 horsepower and 239 pound-feet of torque. There is the 2.4 liter Tiger Shark V4, which is going to push out 180 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque. And lastly is the optional 2 liter turbocharged V4, which is going to push out 270 horsepower and an impressive 295 pound-feet of torque. As we take a peek underneath the hood, so we can easily top up some fluids if we need to. We've got easy access to our battery, and then we can easily check our oil as well. We've got a little bit of a cover along the top there, just hide some of those components underneath. And then moving up overhead, as you can see, we've got our latch with the actual release being along the top there. So as you start to kind of fiddle, trying to figure out where the actual latch is, just underneath the P and Jeep, we drop down, and then just in between, as you can see there, we've got the latch. Click that in order to open this thing up. When it comes down to filling up fuel inside of the Cherokee, along the passenger side, we've got a little door there, non-lockable, and then it's also a capless system there. So what we're going to do is just insert our fuel hose, fill it up, click it in order to lock it back into place. Now, when it comes down to fuel quality, regardless of the trim level or the engine choice of the vehicle you're looking at, regular 87 gas, so 87 octane is all you technically need to use inside of the vehicle. That's a minimum manufacturer's recommendation. Having said that, when you look at the horsepower and the torque specs for the vehicle, that's assuming you're using a premium fuel instead. Do you need to use a premium fuel? Absolutely not, but you're going to get slightly better performance out of it when you use that higher quality fuel. Now, one thing to note is when you look at the 2 liter turbo engine specifically, that's normally when I recommend using a higher quality fuel anyways, because it's cleaner underneath the hood. And one thing about those turbocharged engines is you're going to have to care for them a little bit more meticulously than a regular naturally aspirated. So things like changing spark plugs a little bit more frequently as well. Taking a look at towing capacity inside of the vehicle. So the overall towing capacity is going to depend on how you have the vehicle configured. But looking at the tow package from the factory, we've got the receiver, 4 7-pin wiring harness there as well. Looking at the towing capacity, when we look at the 3.2 liter engine, that's going to be able to pull up to 4,500 pounds. Inside of the 2 liter turbo, it's going to be able to pull up to 4,000 pounds. And then the 2.4 liter base engine is going to be able to pull up to 2,000 pounds. Next up, taking a peek at the key fob. So great look when it comes down to it. Along the back, we've got our latch in order to get access to the emergency access key if we need it. Front, we've got our unlock and our lock button, trunk release, remote start, as well as our horn or a panic alarm button. In order to be able to remote start the vehicle, we're going to press the lock button to make sure that the car is locked, and we're going to press that circle button twice. So as you can see there, remote start is now active, and in order to cancel, we're just going to press that circle button once. Now getting inside of the vehicle, we've got a couple different options. We can press this button on the key fob. There is the option of pressing the button just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. And we've got a few other options on the outside. So if we take a look underneath the J in Jeep, there is a button underneath. We can press that in order to lift that liftgate up as well. But one of the nice things, we're in the Trailhawk Elite version of the vehicle, which means we've got a foot-activated powered liftgate. Swipe your foot underneath, step back, look at this. Foot-activated power, let's have a peek inside. So cargo dimensions of the vehicle are going to be showing up. So as you can see there, we do have quite a little bit of space that is available. Now one of the nice things is that the seats themselves are a 60-40 split, so we can fold down one side or the other if we need to store a few things. Now let's look at those cargo dimensions when we have that second row folded down. As I mentioned, we do have 60-40 split seats, so we can fold down one side or the other if we need to get a little bit more storage space. But as you can see there, we still do have quite a little bit of space to get some things inside of the back of the vehicle. Now, as we start to move inside the trunk, so a few things to point out. Along the left side, first and foremost, we can also close up the trunk if we need to just by pushing that button. We do have the option for a cargo shade as well. 12-volt power point in the back. Along the other side, we've got that nice Jeep woofer in the back there, and a few tie downs. So that's going to be standard for the driver and passenger side. Now we do have a cover there. The cover is removable, so very easy. We can literally just crank this whole thing out. And as you can see there, we've got our full-size spare tire, we've got the jack underneath, and we've got our spigot. So if we ever need to fill up using a jerry can, insert that first. We've got a little bit of storage space along both sides as well. And one of the nice things is that these things are also removable. So you've got some flexibility there if we ever need to clean it out easily. Now, taking a peek along the inside there, in order to fold the seats down, it's very straightforward. So you can see we've got a latch along the top. We're just going to crank that, and we're just going to fold the seat down. So very, very simple there. Picking it back up, all we have to do, push it, click it in order to lock it back into place. Looking at second row spacing inside of the vehicle. So I'm 6 feet tall. I've got the driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall. And one thing to note, like I've got a nice amount of knee room and a decent amount of foot room, but one thing to consider is the head space. So like I said, I'm 6 feet tall, so sitting up straight, I've actually got 0 head space up overhead. Now, if I kind of slouch back a little bit more, I do have a little bit more space, which is nice to know. These seats are locked into place, so we can't move them forwards, backwards, we can't recline, things like that. So you're essentially stuck in place here. So if you've got some taller people, they may need to sit in that front seat instead. Now the other option, this one does have that panoramic sunroof that stretches along the top. If you have some taller kids, taller passengers, etc., you might want to look at an option without the roof because it's going to give us about an extra inch and change of headspace up overhead. Now looking at some second row features, so as you can see there, we do have a few cup holders in that middle row. Click that in order to lock it back into place. On both the passenger and the driver's side, we do have some pockets we can easily store some things if we need to. Along both doors, as you can see, we do have a few cup holders. We've got our basic lock control as well, which I kind of love the styling of this thing. It's pretty unique. We've got our holy crap handles up overhead. We've got a little hook if we need to store some things. And then moving down, so the important parts, we've got our basics for climate control. So we can control what's going on with the fans. We can close off the vent if we need to. Now as we start to move down, so as you can see there, we've got a ton of different USB ports. So we're USB, USB-C, as well as a traditional wall outlet. So if we need to plug something in, we can easily do that. Now taking a peek along the driver and the passenger door, we do have a little button along the side there, and that's going to give us easy access if we need to either lock or unlock the doors. Hopping inside of the vehicle, so as you can see there, now a few things to point out. This one has one of the added packages which gives us a seat memory option there. Along the driver's side door itself, we've got our window control buttons, so we can adjust our side view mirrors. We've got our window up and down, kill off power, and then our unlock and our lock buttons. Moving down, we've got a little bit of storage space for some bottles if we need to. Just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, we've got a few other options there. We've got our basics for vent control. We can figure out what's going on with our running lamps, fog lamps on or off, and we've got the dimmer switches for the cluster screen. Then we can either open or close the trunk from the inside there as well. Now, adjusting the driver's seat inside of the Cherokee might be manual, might be power, depending on which trim level of the vehicle you're looking at. We're in the Trailhawk Elite with a few added packages, so we've got a powered driver-passenger seat. So on our left-hand side, we've got a series of toggles. We can bring the seat forwards, backwards, we can go up or down with it for our own personal preferences. Along the middle, we've got one to adjust the backrest, the same idea, forwards, backwards. And then there's a little dial pad just in behind that one, and that's going to be for our power lumbar support. So we can give ourselves a little bit of extra stability in our lower back if we really need to. Adjusting the steering wheel is also a very straightforward process. It's going to be a manual process in the vehicle. So just by our left knee, there's a little lever there. We're just going to crank that one down, and it's a telescopic wheel across the entire lineup. All we're going to do is we can pull in and out. We can go up and down with it. Once you've got that perfect position, take that lever, click it up, lock it back into place. Next up, let's take a peek at the steering wheel. So very in-depth look at this thing, but starting off very simply along the left-hand side, as you can see there, we've got a directional pad, and that's gonna let us figure out what's going on with the instrument cluster. So we can kind of move up and down, we can go between miles or kilometers per hour on that digital speedometer on the first screen. Moving down, we've got our basics for vehicle info. We can go left and right, jump between active screens there as well. Moving down, as you can see, we've got some basics for driver assistance. So we've got a lane keeping, lane centering system. Whether or not that one's turned off is going to depend on what we've done with that button there. So we can easily turn that lane sensing system off if we want to. As we start to move back down a little bit more, so as you can see, we've got our fuel economy. And if we ever need to do a reset for our trip, we can just press the OK button in the middle, and that's going to reset us. And we've got our trip A versus B counter as well. Moving back down, we've got our start stop. So we do have the option of turning that start stop off if we want to. So as you can see there, we can push the button in order to turn that start stop system off if that drives you nuts. Moving down a bit more, we've got our audio. So we've got what station is currently playing. Down a bit more, we've got our messages. So no stored messages as of right now. And last one is going to be our screen setup. Now this is where things get interesting because as we start to move in, so as you can see there, we've got the flexibility of kind of changing around the overall display. So we can jump up and down between different options there. So if we look at our basics, we've got our odometer, favorite menus, gear display, and a few other things. So we can adjust what's going on. So looking along the top there, so in our center, so if we go to our upper left for a second, we can change it out to our range, our average economy, trip A, distance B, etc. So we've got a lot of flexibility as to what's actually showing on this thing. I love that flexibility. Like I love the option and the capabilities that we've got to be able to kind of set this up to our own personal preferences. So you can kind of play around and there's a lot of flexibility as to what parts of the screen you can set it up to. If you've kind of played around with it a little bit too much, we can restore it back to our factory default setting there instead and click it back in order to be able to bring us back to our main screen again and back again, as you can see, to our digital speedometer. All right, moving down a little bit more, we can either answer or hang up on a phone call. We've got our voice command prompt, which is going to be useful because we can make phone calls. We can also change radio stations. And if our vehicle was equipped with factory navigation, we could press this button in order to be able to use that in order to navigate with our voice instead. Moving off to the right-hand side, at a very minimum, we're going to have at least basic cruise control. This one has the added technology package for the adaptive cruise control. So the adaptive cruise control is essentially a set it and forget it cruise control. The buttons along the bottom there are going to be our distance indicators. So how close or how far are we away from the vehicle that's in front of us? You've got some flexibility when it comes down to it. As we start to move forward, we've got our blinkers, and we can flash our high beams if we want to. Permanently locking them out, we do have to be on one that's not our auto mode. So off to the right there, we can flip our high beams on in order to permanently lock them out instead. Otherwise, it's just going to be an auto high beam. Moving off to the right-hand side, we can adjust our rear wipers as well. We've got our front wiper control. We're going to pull in towards us for that front wiper fluid. We're going to push away for the rear. Now, one other thing to note as we look into the back of the steering wheel, so as you can see there, we've got a button with a toggle switch so we can go up and down with it. That's going to let us change between our active presets, or we can also seek by going up and down that way as well. So we can change between active songs, presets, things like that along that left side. As we move along the right side, there's another one there, so another little button, and we can toggle up or down. That's going to let us change between active sources, so our AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. And then we've got our volume rocker, so we can go up and down with it. Let's do a quick audio test. So nice, so nice. This thing sounds incredible. But that's going to be the basics of the steering wheel cluster. So the steering wheel, I should say, as well as that instrument cluster. Let's take a peek at this uConnect screen. So tons of different things to cover off here. First and foremost, right along the very top, as you can see there, we've got our active presets. We've got 12 different presets that we can change in between. If we want to save a preset, we're just going to change to the station that we want, and we're just going to press and hold one of the options there in order to be able to set it into place. We can change between AM, FM, Sirius XM, or any of our other available sources. We've got a hot button press for our map, as well as turning our HD radio on or off. We can browse between our presets a slightly different way, which means we can easily toss them out so we can garbage them if we need to. And we've also got the option of changing in between our different stations. We can seek out from there. We can tune to a different station if we want to this way, so just type in and go, changing a station out that way. We can adjust our audio there as well, so we can do our balance fade. We've got our equalizer, so change out our treble, mid-range, bass, speed, adjusted volume, and then we've got our basics for surround sound as well. Moving back, we also do have our climate control settings. So we do have some more advanced climate control settings a little bit further down, so as you can see there, but we've got some good ones throughout this middle screen there. So taking a look, we can adjust what's going on with that actual fan control. Is it going to our windshield face or to our feet? We've also got our max air conditioning, air circulation, our auto, front and rear, and we do have dual zone climate control. So if somebody likes things a little bit warmer, we've got that option to easily set that up. We can sync it back to whatever that driver's side setting is. Now the control buttons we can also access along the bottom screen there also. So by pressing controls, if the vehicle was equipped with those heated and ventilated seats, those would show up. We've got our heated wheel, backup camera, and we can jump into our settings there, which we'll get to the settings in just a second. Moving back into our climate, we can set our fan speed as well, if we really want to go that route, and we also have the option of doing it a little bit further down as well. Moving into our U apps. So our U apps essentially give us the option of looking at everything that's available inside of the vehicle. So going between our different pages there, we can kind of see that it's literally everything in a nutshell, but let's go through some of the basics. We've got our Sirius XM travel link. We've got a hot button press for our driver heated or cooled seats. Same thing with the passenger. Projection management has to do with our cell phone. So the vehicle is equipped with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay capabilities. This is going to be the summary screen of all of our connected devices for Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. This is going to be the screen that we're going to go to see all of our actively connected devices strictly for Bluetooth. But we'll get to that one in just a second when we cover off the phone. Wi-Fi hotspot, the vehicle is equipped with an onboard modem, which means we can use it as a wireless hotspot for up to 10 devices. We do need a data-only plan in order to be able to do that. We've got our SOS or our assistant. We can activate our services. We've got some basic for navigation. We've got our Offroad Pages there as well. So taking a look at our Offroad Pages there, so a ton of different options that are available. We can see what's going on with our steering angle. We can look at our power transfer unit, looking at our accessory gauges. Like, yeah, we could see it on that cluster screen, but having the option of having everything up and high like this is great. We can see exactly where we are for latitude, longitude. We can see the pitch and roll as we're driving as well. And we can also select the terrain, and then clicking back out from there. And we've also got, off to the other side, our app manager. We've got a hot button press for the backup camera as well, so we don't need to be in reverse. We can turn our heated steering wheel on or off. We've got our media, climate controls, navigation, and a number of other things. And that's going to be the basics of the apps. Moving into factory navigation is very straightforward. We can set up a home or a work address. We can select where we want to go to, so a recently done address, point of interest, icons, etc. Searching for an actual address is very straightforward. So all you're going to do is start typing, press OK. We can kind of adjust from there, space out, and then we start to type in an address there. Press OK. And it's going to let us know kind of what's going on, what's close. We press that button there, and as you can see, we can route to it. So we press route. We can save it out if we want to. We can avoid certain things. We can look at some added route options. We'll get to the route options in just a second, but let's go. So it lets us know what's going on with the route itself. As we jump inside, we've got the option of going full screen with it. We can repeat directions. We can mute the guidance if we don't want the thing talking to us if we wanted to. And we can also jump into our settings. And this is where we get into some different options there. So looking at our map, we can jump between different options. So if we want our map appearance to be a default setting, we've got our current street displayed. We've also got our auto zoom. So as we're coming to an upcoming turn, it's going to zoom in on the map for us to let us know. We've got options for our vehicle icon, point of interest icons, and a number of other things. Moving back, we've got our speed limit, which if the vehicle picks up on the speed limit there, it's going to announce the warning to us. That's a matter of personal preference. That one personally drives me nuts, but it's your call. Our guidance, play guidance, yes or no. Do we want the voice guidance, or do we just want the turn-by-turn display inside of the cluster screen as well, which is great. So as we start to drive, it's going to let us know which way we're going in the actual cluster screen. We've got an option for the lane recommendation and our different route options. So if we want to avoid freeways, toll roads, things like that, we can select whatever options we want to, and it's dynamically going to update our map based off of our preferences. Moving back again, we've got our GPS coordinates, map updates, and then our basic about settings. Now, as you can see there, we currently do have an active map, so we push that up in order to be able to stop the guidance. So we go stop guidance, stop the destination, and it's canceled out for us as well. So using this is very straightforward. Jumping back into our menu again, we've got a ton of different options. Again, moving back into our navigation settings if we want to go through some other options there. And that's going to be factory navigation in a nutshell. Next up, looking at phone. So we do have the option of easily connecting an Android and an iPhone device. Let's start off on the iPhone side of things. So what we're going to do first and foremost on our phone, make sure the Bluetooth is turned on and no phone is paired. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to connect a phone. So Bluetooth, we've got that turned on right now. We're just going to jump into pairing. We're going to go into paired phone and devices. Nothing's connected, so we're just going to hit add a device. And we're just going to wait for uConnect to show up on the screen there. There we go. So as you can see, uConnect is shown up, so we're just going to press that in order to be able to connect. Okay, and we need to make sure that the pin numbers match up, which in this case they do, so we're going to hit yes. And on the phone, we're just going to hit pair. Okay, do I want to allow my contacts and favorites to sync? Yes. And as you can see there, pairing is now successful. So we hit OK. Now, one of the nice things is that when we're connected through Apple, when we're connected over Bluetooth on our Apple device, we can use the voice command button in order to be able to activate Siri, which is kind of nice. Pressing OK, we can X out of that as well. So I am now fully connected there. We jump back into my phone. We've got different contacts, recents, contacts. We've got my keypad, and we've got that pairing option there again. So it's very straightforward in order to be able to connect a device. Now, we do have the option of setting up Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are very straightforward. So if we start off on the Apple CarPlay side of things, we're just going to take that USB cable, plug it into our available USB port. Opposite end of the cable, we're just going to plug it into the phone, and watch this. Okay, do we want to allow CarPlay while the phone is locked? Yes, we want to allow that. And as you can see there, my phone is connected. So we've got my phone, got my messages. And one of the nice things is that if the vehicle is not equipped with factory navigation, don't worry about it, because we can use Apple Maps, we can use Google Maps, or we can use Waze directly through this middle screen. Now, one of the nice things is that if we are connected, so as you can see there, we are fully connected, but if we're connected to CarPlay, we've got the option of adjusting what's going on with our CarPlay settings. So we look at our car, we can customize the actual tray. So if you have a tendency to, I don't know, maybe listen to podcasts a bit more, we drag that up to the top. And as you can see there on our home screen, it's adjusted that. If we prefer to use Google Maps, we drive that up as well. And as you can see, it's dynamically updating the screen for us. If you've played around with some things, or if you've kind of removed so many things, we can adjust it, we can add it back in from there, or we can just do a reset in order to bring it back to that factory default instead. As you can see, back to the factory default, bring it back up, that's going to be the basics of the screen there. Now, as we jump into settings, so if we ever want to remove the phone, all we're going to do is go into our phone Bluetooth, and we go into our projection manager. We can disconnect CarPlay if we want to. So as you can see there, it's now disconnected. We can jump back into my phone if we wanted to go that way. We can fully disconnect this thing as well, because when we jump back into our phone again, so phone Bluetooth, projection manager, we've got my phone there, so we can enable it or we can completely forget the device. So as you can see there, completely disconnected. We can disable projection as well, which means that if we're connected, it's not going to use Apple CarPlay instead. What it's going to do is it's going to charge the phone up. So I'm charging, not using CarPlay, but I am still connected over Bluetooth. And it's really that simple adding in an iPhone to this thing. We can easily disconnect it from there. Setting up an Android device is literally the exact same process. So on your phone, all you're going to want to make sure you do is go into your Bluetooth settings. So Bluetooth, and as you can see there, we're just going to scan for active devices after we hit add device. So we're just going to wait for uConnect to show up there under available devices. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, uConnect is there. So we're just going to connect in. Okay, there we go. Same thing, make sure that the pin numbers are correct. Yes and yes. All right, do we want to make it the favorite phone? Yes or no? But first, we want to allow access to our messages, allow access to our contacts, make that favorite phone, yes or no. So we do have the option of setting a favorite phone if we want to. We can easily delete a phone if we need to as well. So we just delete phone, and as you can see, it's strictly the Galaxy that's connected there. Now, setting up Android Auto is literally the exact same process, but if we jump back into the phone, as you can see, exact same thing. We've got our favorites, contacts, etc. Connecting, same idea. We're just going to plug into any available USB port. Clicked in, same idea, opposite end of the cable. We're just going to plug that into our phone, and we're going to give it a few seconds. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and allow access to phone data. Yeah, we want to make sure we allow that. And ooh, you know what? The reason why this actually isn't working, because pairing, projection manager, I turned it off. So let's turn it back on again. Android Auto, we want to hit next on that. Okay, and as you can see there, we are now fully connected. So we've got Google Maps, I should say, that are playing through the middle there. Now, very similar to the Apple side of things, we do have the option of customizing the tray if we want to. So going into Android Auto, as you can see there, we've got our basic settings. We can customize the launcher if we want to, so we can just do a drag and drop, similar to the Apple side of things. We can use our Google detection, Google Assistant, and a number of other things. Now, one thing to note, we don't have the option for wireless Android Auto inside of this vehicle, unfortunately. We do have to be connected through a wired connection there. But as you can see there, fully disconnected there very simply. Jumping back into pairing, projection manager. We can easily forget our devices as well if we're getting rid of the vehicle. Paired devices, we are fully connected there. So in order to be able to disable or delete, we're just going to go into our settings, delete phone, and as you can see, the phone is now fully disconnected from the vehicle. All right, and lastly, we do have our settings button along the bottom there as well, and that's going to give us a ton of different options that are available. So we can change between either English, Spanish, or French. We can set up the basics for a display as well. So if you have a few different preferences, if you want to manually adjust the brightness of the screen, we can easily do that. We can set our theme. That beeping that we get, we can turn it off if we really want to. We've got different timeouts and different alerts and things like that. Moving into our units, we can go US, metric, or custom. Our voice, we've got a few different options there as well. So our command list, if we press the voice command button on the steering wheel, this is going to be the command list. So we can exit that if we don't want to have that list showing up. Again, that one's going to be a matter of personal preference. And then we've got our brief versus our advanced, our detailed mode. I want you to listen to something for a second. 94.9.
Tuning to 94.9 FM.
Okay, so it gave us a notification letting us know that it was changing. But if we go to brief instead, listen to this. 97.7. Okay, it changed the station, but it didn't tell us. Now that's one of the nice things, is that response length essentially is in advanced mode, so it's not going to give us as many notifications. Our clock settings, we can go between a couple different things. So 12 and 24-hour mode, we can manually set or let the vehicle determine what the time should be based off of the GPS location, or we can manually set it if we want to. Moving back, we've got basics for our camera. So that park review, back up the delay. So as we go to put the vehicle in reverse, is it going to be delayed? Yes or no? This one comes on immediately. And then that parking view, the guidelines. So the guidelines as we shift back, these are going to be the guidelines. So whether or not that one shows up is going to be a matter of personal preference. Moving back in, as you can see, we've got some safety and driver assistance settings. So emergency braking, we can turn that one on if we really want to. So that emergency braking, I think, is a great system, but if it drives you nuts, you've got that option of turning it off if you wanted to, and you've also got the option of setting on the sensitivity level. Moving back, we've got our lane sense or early warning detection. Lets us know as we start to veer off into a lane, and that signals strength there as well. Side distance indicators, we've got our park sense as well, so that reverse sensing system, whether it's just the sound on the display as well, the volume of it for not only the front but also the rear park sense. So we do have a forward and a reverse sensing system. That reverse braking assist, so as we're backing up, if there's an obstacle there, the vehicle's automatically going to brake for us, so we can adjust that one, turn it on or off if we'd like to. Blind spot system lets us know if anybody's under the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. Do we want to turn that system off? Lights or a chime as well as the light. So I do recommend at a minimum keeping it on the lights, because it's going to highlight orange, letting us know if anybody's under the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. Let's actually show you what that looks like on the outside there. So if you take a look, back on, that little orange thing that highlighted there for that briefest of second, that's going to be that blind spot system. So it lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. Now as we start to move down a little bit more, as you can see there, we've got our hill start assist as well as our tire fill assist. Next up, moving into our mirrors and wipers. So as you can see there, we've got our rain sensing wipers is going to be the big one there. So I do recommend keeping that rain sensing wiper on for the most part. If you're going into a car wash, make sure you turn that one off, because with wipers on, it's going to go crazy as you drive. So definitely recommend just making sure you switch that one off before you go into a car wash. Moving down, we've got our brakes, so our auto parking brake as well as our brake service. We can reset that one if we need to. We've got our lights, so our different headlight delays, our auto dimming high beams as well. So that's one of the nice things, because the vehicle essentially, if it's too dark out, it's going to flip the high beams on automatically. If it senses an oncoming vehicle, it's automatically going to dim them for us, which is great, before flipping them back on again. So I love the fact that we've got that option there. Moving into our seats and comfort, so the easy exit seats, if that one's turned on and we turn the vehicle off, it's automatically going to lower and then back the seats up for us. And then when we go to remote start the vehicle, or all start regardless, are the heated vented seats and the heated steering wheel going to come on automatically. Moving down, we've got our key off options, so same idea. So we've got the option of selecting our easy seats, our audio settings. So we've got, again, same thing, we've already seen the screen, but our treble mid-range bass, we can select the balance as well. Phone Bluetooth, so same idea, we've got some more basics there, which we can also access through that phone button there. If you're a heavy Sirius XM user, you've got a few different options. So channel skip, if you have a preference and don't listen to certain stations, you can deselect whichever ones you don't, or you can just select the ones that you typically would listen to. So as we're selecting between different stations, it's going to go between your personal favorites instead. We've got the basic for our subscription information, and then we've got our reset, so we can clear all personal data, or we can remove it back, or reset it, I should say, back to our factory default. Useful if you're ever selling the vehicle. And then we've got basics for our system information as well, and that is going to be the basics of this uConnect media screen. And now using Park Assist is very straightforward. First step, what we're going to do is just hit that P button there, and that's going to turn Park Assist on. Now, one thing to know, we do have to be in drive in order for it to work. As you can see there, we can jump either between the left or the right side by pressing that button there. So pressing the left or right button, we can jump in between either parallel or perpendicular parking. Vehicle can help us out with either. And by using the stick on that left side, so that turning stick, we can figure out if it's going to look on the right side or the left side for us, but it'll always default to the right. And we're literally just going to follow the directions on screen. So we're just going to start pulling forward, and we're literally just going to follow the directions as we go. Okay, so it's found a spot for us, so it wants us to stop. And all we have to do is remove hands and shift into reverse. So remove hands from the steering wheel. We're just going to drop down, and we're just going to shift it into reverse and back up. So as you can see there, it's going to start moving backwards. Now, as you can see, it's taking control of the wheel itself, but I still need to control the gas and the brake. So we're just going to watch the screen as we go. Okay, same thing, follow directions. We got to shift into drive next. And steering wheel is taking over, moving us forward. Okay, it's telling us to shift into reverse now. So down into reverse, same idea. We're just going to keep our foot on the brake and just let the vehicle kind of do its thing. But you can see it's backing us up as it goes. Oh, and here we go. Park Assist is complete, and it really is that simple. We can turn on that park. We can also turn that beeping sound on or off, four-way blinkers, and then our lane sensing system. Moving down a little bit more, we've got our volume rocker. We can mute up the audio, traction control, auto start stop. So that's the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine. If we're stopped, we can adjust that one. We can turn it off if we'd like to. If you find the screen a little bit too busy, we can push this button to turn it off. We can easily change radio stations by moving this way. Honestly, this is probably going to be the least effective method of tuning, because if we jump on the actual screen, we can do a direct tune, or we can just use our voice by using the voice command button on the steering wheel. Down a tiny little bit more, we do have dual zone climate control. We can control our fan speed, let the vehicle determine the cabin temperature, air conditioning, air circulation, front and rear window as well. Now moving down a tiny little bit more, as you can see there, we've got a little storage space. We've got another USB port, as well as a 3.5mm jack and a 12-volt power point. Moving down a bit more, this is where things get a little technical. So we've got our auto mode, which is going to let the vehicle determine which driving mode we're actually going to be in. But as we start to move down, we've got our sport modes, we've got our snow, sport, sand, mud, as well as our rock crawl mode. Each mode is going to do something different to the drivetrain. Like when you're in the snow mode, it's going to change out our traction control and stability control for wheel slippage. Our sport mode is going to hold the gears a little bit longer, so it gives us a little bit more of a sportier performance. Moving up, we've got some different options there as well. So we've got our four-wheel drive low, and we're going to be in high typically otherwise. So our low mode, we're going to use that if we need low-speed power. So for technical driving, so things like pulling a boat out of water, some rock crawls, things like that. And so we've got a lot of different flexibilities. Our high range, typically we're going to use that for all road surfaces. So things like wet, snow, sand, etc. We do have the option of locking out our rear differential, which is beneficial if we're going to be going off-roading. We've got our hill descent control, which that is going to work for up to 48 kilometers an hour. So if we're going downhill technical driving, we can set whatever speed we'd like to, and the vehicle is going to keep it at that set speed. And all we have to do is focus on the steering wheel. Next one up is going to be the select speed cruise, and that's going to be for up to 5 kilometers an hour. So very, very low speed, but it's really, really good for technical driving. So if you're doing rock crawling and things like that, it is a huge benefit to switch in that mode, because we're going low speed in order to really worry about the technical side of driving as we go. Moving down a bit more, so as you can see, we've got our gear shifter, we've got our park reverse neutral drive, and then we can throw it over to get into the manual mode. So we've got a 9-speed automatic transmission, so we can easily adjust which gear we're in if we'd really like to. So if you like that kind of more of a manual transmission feel. Moving down, we've got our electronic parking brake, a few cup holders, a little bit of storage space, and we've got 2 separate trays. So we've got our main tray, we can lift this other one up, and as you can see there, a little bit more storage space, and we've also got a USB port on the inside there as well. As we start to move up overhead, so we do have an auto-dimming rearview mirror. We can turn that on or off as necessary. We've got our SOS mode. We've got our assistant there as well that we can call in if we ever need a hand. Up overhead a little bit more, we've got our basics for cabin control lighting. We've also got this twin panel sunroof. So really, really nice panoramic roof. We can open and close that shade easily. It is available across the entire trim vehicle lineup, I should say. So it is optional, but we can add it on if we really like that. We can open and close the shade up. Off to the other side, we've got our basics, so we can either vent out, we can open or close. Up overhead a little bit more, we also do have a sunglasses holder. Click it, lock it back into place. Vehicle itself, if you've got a garage door opener at home, we can program that in very easily as well. Moving down, we've got our vanity mirror with the lights. We can close that up, crank this out in order to be able to extend it to block a little bit more sun. Close it, click it in order to lock it back into place. And one more thing to point out, so as you see there, we've got a little Jeep tab along the top. We just crank that down and we've got a little storage area cubby along the top there as well. So nice look to it. We can close that up as well. So really, really nice if we need to store a few things. All right, folks, now time for the fun part. Let's take this thing out for a spin and see how it handles on the highway. So this is the 3.2 engine, which is going to come standard in the majority of trim levels of the vehicle. We do have the option for the 2-liter turbo, which has similar amount of horsepower, but it's got like 80 pound-feet of torque more than the 3.2 liter does. So if you're looking for something with a teeny little bit more power, you might want to look at the 2-liter turbo as an option, but that one is strictly available in some versions of the vehicle. It's not available across the board. We have to be in certain options in order to be able to get it. All right, so first impressions, like this seat is actually very, very comfortable. So, I mean, you've got some different seat choices when it comes down to it. Oh yeah. Okay, so you've got some different seat choices when it comes down to it, whether you look at cloth seats, leather seats, etc. You've got a number of different options. It's ultimately going to come down to what do you personally find comfortable? Because I'm not going to lie, having those heated and cooled seats in the majority of climates is definitely a good thing. I mean, the cooled seats on a day like today when it's like 28 degrees Celsius and sunny outside, these black leather seats, you're going to absolutely wish that you had those ventilated seats on there. So not going to come available standard, but it is available optionally. Okay, so I've got the lane centering system turned on right now. So it's actually interesting because when you pick up to that right speed, it's going to go green, and that's when you know the system itself is actually activated. It's kind of neat. I'm going to test that one out on the highway a little bit just to kind of see how reactive it is. Oh. So far, the engine seems fairly peppy. This is not too shabby. Okay, let's see. Okay, all right. Okay, not too shabby, not too shabby. All right. All right, so for that engine, that 3.2 engine, that is a great feel. So I do have that lane centering system turned on right now as well. So I'm just gonna kind of veer. Okay, that's nice. So it's a nice gentle little nudge that it gives me as I go. So that's definitely a nice thing to know, that if you've got that lane centering system turned on and something happens, you're maybe preoccupied for the briefest of seconds, with that system engaged, it's nice to know that it's just going to give you a gentle nudge in order to recenter you and pull you back into your lane. Like it's not a big nudge that you get, it's just that gentle little pull, which I think is great. That's really cool. I love that. All right, I'm going to try out the adaptive cruise control system as well. So I'm going to set it, and next up, I just have to wait for somebody to get in front of me that's going slow. So I'm going to pull off into the right lane in a second, and I'm going to get behind a truck here just so I can kind of feel what this adaptive cruise control system is like and see how responsive it is. Like, I am a big fan of adaptive cruise control. Like, if you've never driven with adaptive cruise before, it is an unbelievable system. And it's all a psychological play, especially if you're the type of person where you've got a heavier foot, because you've got it set at whatever speed, like 60 miles an hour, 100 miles per hour, whatever the case may be on the highway. If the car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. So it's a subconscious thing, because if you have a tendency to have a heavier foot, it's automatically, you're going to think that you've set it at a certain speed, but when the vehicles in front of you start slowing down, you won't even realize that you're going slower. Now, I can tell that I'm going slower, and I've actually got the speed set at 100, and the car in front of me is going slower, so it's slowing me down even more. So I love that fact. And I've got the lane centering system working in conjunction with the adaptive cruise control. So it's not a fully self-driving car. It's keeping me bouncing between my lanes though, which is nice, but it's not fully self-driving as of yet. So it would really be nice to see Jeep getting there. But I mean, using the systems in tandem, so that lane centering system and the adaptive cruise control system, very, very nice for those longer highway drives. Brakes are nice and responsive there as well, which is great. I've got the auto start stop system turned on there right now as well, so we might lose power to the engine. Yeah, there it goes. All right, I wasn't sure. It doesn't always happen, and it's the same across different manufacturers as well. Sometimes that system will turn off, sometimes it won't turn off. It's really up to the car when it decides to do it. So it's nice to know that it kind of gives us like I said, it just does it when it wants to do it. So in this case, it did. If the vehicle's not fully up to it from a temperature perspective, like temperature-wise, it's not fully warmed up yet. If you've got the AC blasting, the heat going, and a bunch of other things, the car may never turn off. But if you're not a fan of it, we can push that auto start stop button, we can kill that power off, and it's just going to bring the engine roaring back to life again. So it's nice to know that we've got that flexibility to set that up if we want to. Okay, gears are nice and responsive. The shift points, I mean, I'm in the manual mode, so I'm literally selecting the shift points. I'm going a little bit slower right now, like I'm literally going 8, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's shifted me. Okay, that's nice. It's nice to know. So when you're in that manual mode, it's going to automatically shift you down as well. So if you're slowing down, it's not going to let you start in third gear because it's not going to work, but it's at least going to let you start in one of those other gears. Okay, so definitely something to note. So if you're a fan of driving in that manual mode, it's like a manual transmission. Make sure you're paying attention to the rev, the RPMs, because you're going to have to shift the vehicle out as you go. So if you're the type of driver where you may not necessarily pay attention as you're going, might not be a good idea to drive in manual mode, but if you have a tendency to pay attention a little bit more as you go, manual mode, definitely a good option. Cool. Same thing, it's shifting me down as I go, as I'm slowing, and down. That's nice. Back into drive mode. Nice and responsive though. When it comes down to fuel economy, like you've got a number of different options, and the fuel economy is going to be different. The type of gas that you're going to be using is going to be slightly different. Like minimum manufacturer's recommendation for the most part is just your regular 87 octane, your regular 87 fuel. You don't necessarily need to use a higher performance fuel, a higher grade fuel like your 89, 91s, etc. But I recommend it in some cases. Here's where I recommend it. So let's say, as an example, you're in a turbo engine. If you're in the 2-liter turbocharged engine, I would recommend running a higher quality octane because it's going to give you a little bit better performance underneath the hood. That's going to be the same for every engine choice, but specifically in turbocharged engines, if you opt for the 2-liter turbocharged, one thing to note is that you're going to have to maintain that vehicle slightly differently than its regular gas counterpart. So something to consider there. It's got a really nice feel to it though. It is in the auto mode as well, which means that the vehicle determines what it's in. So whether that's the auto mode, the sport mode, or so the snow mode, sport mode, things like that, you can shift on the fly. You have to be going under a certain speed in order for it to work. So I've just thrown it into sport mode, which is interesting because it's deactivated the traction control. And one of the nice things about sport mode is that it holds the gears a little bit longer. So it gives you a little bit more of a sportier feel. So as we put that gas down, it's gonna rev the engine a little bit higher just to give us that more sportier performance as we go. But that's nice though. I miss having that old school gear shifter. As in some of the other vehicles that I've test driven, it's, you know, the gear shifter is gone. You've got a rotary dial or piano shifter keys, things like that. It is nice having that old, that kind of classic style gear shifter though. That's just because I come from driving a 6-speed manual transmission. So having anything that's not a shifter knob that I can grip onto is kind of weird, but. Okay, when it comes down to road noise, so the tires that are on this thing, it's an all-terrain tire, but the type of rubber that it is, it does give off a little bit of road noise. It's not a ton, like it's nothing more than you'd see if you were looking at like a winter tire. So that type of road noise, that's what you can expect inside of these ones. But it is an all-terrain tire, an all-season tire that's going to come standard inside of this vehicle. But still, it's still nice. Like I said, it's not too loud when it comes down to it either. It's pretty nice though. Spacing wise is good. Like I said, like I'm 6 feet tall. So for me, like even if you're like 6'2", 6'3", you could probably comfortably fit inside this thing. Like with the seat all the way down, up overhead, I've got 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of headspace up overhead. So definitely something to think about there. If you've got some taller people, or if you're taller yourself, you might have to look at another option like the Grand Cherokee instead, or like I said, just having the seat all the way down, all the way back, maybe reclined a little bit. And you may have to look at an option without the sunroof, so we've got a little bit more clearance space up overhead as well. This is nice. It's a good option. Like, you're looking at a 5-seater. If Jeep is on your radar, I would definitely say check this thing out because it's got good power when it comes down to it. Pricing wise, it's going to kind of vary all over the board depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're looking at. One of the interesting things is the availability of front-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive. Because if you're a US driver, you've got the option of selecting between front-wheel drive for the majority of the trim levels and 4x4 as an option in some. When you get into Canada though, we're strictly 4x4 and that's across the entire trim lineup. So don't get me wrong, it is nice having that 4x4, especially in Canadian winters. Like, it can get pretty chaotic sometimes, but I mean, it would be nice to have that front wheel drive option. You can save yourself a couple bucks and it's also slightly better on fuel economy. Warranty on this thing is also fairly straightforward. Powertrain basic warranty there. The numbers are going to show up down below as well, but you've got your basic warranty. It's fairly standard across every manufacturer as well. That's nice. Oh, that's really nice. And here we go. Well, folks, that was a look at the 2021 Jeep Cherokee. What did you think? I personally love this thing. It's got a nice feel to it, nice look to it. You got some different options there. But if you have any questions, drop down in the comment section below. Reach out to Pickering Chrysler as well if you want to buy one of these things, because this is a really good option, especially if you've got Jeep in that radar. And even if you don't, check this thing out, test drive it. I guarantee you're going to have a little bit of fun. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Think about sharing it with your social networks and subscribing. And until I see you next time, make sure you stay safe.